She called me trash at my wedding. 10 minutes later, she was crying on the floor, begging me not to destroy everything she'd ever built. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment when I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. My name is Emma Carter and I'm 29 years old. Until 6 months ago, I was a paralegal at a small law firm in South Boston, working 60-hour weeks and living in a cramped studio apartment with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that only worked when it felt like it. My father had been a factory worker, or so I'd always told people. My mother passed away when I was 12. I grew up understanding that hard work was the only currency that mattered, that nothing in life came easy, and that people like me had to fight for every scrap of dignity we could get. Then I met James Morgan at a charity gala I'd attended with my boss. He was everything I wasn't: tall, confident, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. He had that easy smile that comes from never having worried about money, from never having eaten ramen for dinner 5 nights in a row. He approached me at the bar, and when he asked what I did, I expected him to lose interest the moment I said paralegal. But he didn't. He leaned in closer, asked me questions about my work, laughed at my jokes. By the end of the night, he'd asked for my number. "You're different from the women I usually meet," he told me on our 3rd date, as we sat in an expensive restaurant where the menu didn't list prices. "You're real. Authentic. You don't care about my last name or my family's money." I'd laughed, touched his hand across the white tablecloth. "I care about you, James. Just you." 6 months later, he proposed. It was perfect, romantic, everything a girl from Southie could dream of. He took me to the public garden, got down on one knee by the swan boats, and presented a ring that caught the sunlight like a small star. I cried. I said yes. I thought this was my fairy tale come true. But meeting his mother, Victoria Morgan, should have been my first warning. We drove to the Morgan estate in Beacon Hill, a massive brownstone that looked like it had been carved from old money and cold hearts. Victoria greeted us at the door, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her Chanel suit immaculate, her smile as warm as a winter storm. "So you're Emma," she said, her eyes scanning me from head to toe like I was livestock at an auction. "James has told me so much about you." "It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Morgan," I said, extending my hand. She looked at my hand for a long moment before taking it, her grip limp and dismissive. "Yes. Well, come in." The house was a museum of wealth, every surface gleaming, every painting worth more than my education. Victoria led us to a sitting room where tea was already prepared on a silver service. She poured with mechanical precision, never once asking how I took mine. "Emma works at a law firm," James said, trying to fill the heavy silence. "How industrious," Victoria replied, the word industrious dripping with condescension. "And your family, Emma? What do they do?" "My father worked in manufacturing. He passed away 2 years ago. My mother died when I was young." "I see." Victoria sipped her tea, her pinky extended just so. "No siblings?" "No, ma'am. Just me." "How unfortunate." She set down her cup with a soft clink. "James, darling, might I speak with you privately for a moment?" I watched them disappear into an adjoining room, heard the low murmur of heated conversation. When they returned 15 minutes later, James looked uncomfortable, and Victoria's smile had sharpened into something predatory. Over the next few months, Victoria made her feelings clear through 1,000 small cruelties. She corrected my pronunciation at dinner parties. She bought me books on etiquette to help you fit in. She introduced me to her friends as James's little project. Each interaction was a paper cut, small enough to ignore individually but collectively drawing blood. "She'll warm up to you," James assured me repeatedly. "She's protective. She just needs time." I wanted to believe him. I tried so hard to be what she wanted, to prove I was worthy of her son. I took the etiquette classes. I studied art and opera. I learned which fork to use for which course. I smiled through her barbs and maintained my composure even when she made me feel like something she'd scraped off her shoe. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Victoria took over everything, dismissing every preference I had. "You have no experience with events of this scale, dear," she'd say, patting my hand like I was a confused child. "Let me handle it. I know what's appropriate for the Morgan family." My dress, the flowers, the venue, the guest list, all chosen by Victoria. When I objected, James would sigh and say, "It's easier to just let her have her way. Pick your battles, So I picked none. I let her steamroll me because I loved James, and I thought that once we were married, once I was officially part of the family, things would improve. I thought I could earn her respect eventually. I was so naive. The morning of the wedding arrived with crisp October sunshine. The ceremony was being held at the Morgan estate, in their sprawling garden that had been transformed into something from a magazine spread. White roses everywhere, strings of lights waiting to twinkle at dusk, 200 chairs arranged in perfect rows. I'd woken at 5 a.m. in a hotel suite Victoria had booked, my stomach churning with nerves and excitement. My best friend Sarah was with me, helping me into my dress, a creation of silk and lace that Victoria had selected. "You look like a princess," Sarah whispered, her eyes misting. "I feel like I'm going to throw up," I admitted, laughing nervously. Pre-wedding jitters. Totally normal. She squeezed my hand. "Emma, are you happy?" "Really happy." I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The dress was beautiful, even if it wasn't what I would have chosen. The hair and makeup were flawless, courtesy of professionals Victoria had hired. I looked like I belonged in their world now. "Yes," I said, forcing confidence into my voice. "James loves me. That's all that matters." At 11 a.m., Victoria appeared at the door of the bridal suite. She dismissed Sarah with a wave of her hand. "I need a moment alone with the bride." Sarah glanced at me uncertainly. I nodded, trying to appear calm. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with my future mother-in-law. Victoria circled me slowly, examining every detail. "The dress looks acceptable on you. Better than I expected, actually." "Thank you," I said, though her compliment felt like an insult. She stopped in front of me, and for a moment her mask of civility dropped completely. What I saw underneath made my blood run cold. Pure contempt. "I want you to understand something, Emma," she said, her voice low and venomous. "You are trash. You will always be trash. You can put on this dress, you can learn which fork to use, you can pretend to fit into our world, but you will never belong here. You're nothing but a gold digger who saw an opportunity and took it." The words hit me like physical blows. My throat tightened. "That's not true. I love James." "Don't insult my intelligence," she snapped. "I know exactly what you are. But here's the thing, dear. James is weak. He's sentimental. He thinks he loves you. So I'm going to let this wedding happen. I'm going to smile for the cameras and welcome you into the family. And then, slowly, methodically, I'm going to make your life so miserable that you'll leave on your own. Because one way or another, you will be gone. The only question is how much you'll have to suffer first." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Why? What have I ever done to you?" "You exist," she said simply. "You're everything this family isn't. Common. Poor. Beneath us. And the fact that my son chose you is an embarrassment I intend to correct." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Emma? If you're thinking about telling James about this conversation, don't bother. He'll never believe you. He thinks I'm a devoted mother who only wants his happiness. He has no idea what I'm really capable of." The door closed. I stood alone in my beautiful dress, feeling filthier than I'd ever felt in my life. My hands were shaking. My carefully applied makeup was starting to run as tears I couldn't control slid down my cheeks. Sarah burst back in moments later. "Emma, oh my God, what happened?" What did she say to you? I couldn't speak. I could only shake my head, trying to pull myself together. The ceremony was starting in less than an hour. 200 guests were arriving. Caterers were setting up. The string quartet was tuning their instruments. Everything was in motion, and I was the center of it all, the bride who was supposed to be glowing with joy. I need to use the bathroom, I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. I locked myself in the suite's marble bathroom, gripping the edge of the sink, forcing myself to breathe. Get it together, Emma. Don't let her win. Don't let her see that she got to you. I splashed cold water on my face, careful not to ruin my makeup completely. As I reached for a towel, my hand accidentally knocked my small clutch off the bathroom counter. Fell open, and my phone tumbled out onto the marble floor. The screen lit up with a notification. Text message. But it wasn't to my phone, it was to James's phone. I stared at it in confusion for a moment before realizing what must have happened. This morning, in the chaos of getting ready in separate hotels, James must have accidentally left his phone in my clutch when he'd stopped by briefly to tell me he loved me. The message preview on the locked screen made my heart stop. Claire, can't wait for tonight. Once the ceremony is over and everyone's distracted, we can finally be together properly. I'm so tired of hiding what we have. Claire. James's cousin Claire. The beautiful, sophisticated Claire who Victoria adored. Claire who'd been at every family dinner, every holiday, always touching James's arm just a little too long, laughing at his jokes just a little too loud. My hands were trembling so violently I almost dropped the phone. I knew his passcode, his mother's birthday naturally. I unlocked it. The messages between James and Claire went back months. Years. Long before he'd met me. Intimate messages. Photos I couldn't unsee. Plans to meet at hotels. Declarations of love that made me feel physically ill. But there was more. A group chat titled The Project between James, Victoria, and someone named Richard, Victoria's financial advisor, I realized. I scrolled through with numb fingers, my brain struggling to process what I was reading. Victoria. The ceremony is the perfect time. Maximum humiliation with maximum witnesses. James. Mother, are you sure about this? It seems cruel. Victoria. Cruel? She's trying to marry into our family for money. This is justice. When you expose her gold digging at the altar with those fabricated financial documents Richard created, she'll be humiliated. The wedding will be called off, and she'll slink back to whatever hovel she came from. Then you and Claire can finally be together properly. James. Claire is worried people will figure out about us. Victoria, they won't. Everyone thinks your cousin's in love with your innocent paralegal. No one suspects the truth. We've been careful. Through today, you two can start openly dating. We'll say you found comfort in each other after the Emma disaster. It's perfect. Richard. I've prepared documents showing Emma tried to access James's trust fund accounts. They're fake, but they'll look real enough for the moment. Once she's exposed, she won't dare pursue legal action. She doesn't have the money for lawyers and will threaten to prosecute her for fraud if she tries anything. The messages went on. They'd planned everything. The wedding was a setup, an elaborate stage production designed to destroy me publicly. James had never loved me. Every moment we'd shared, every kiss, every whispered promise, all of it was a lie, a performance to make the final humiliation more devastating. And Victoria wasn't just a disapproving mother-in-law. She was the architect of a cruel game, using me as entertainment for her twisted sense of superiority. I should have collapsed. I should have fallen apart. Any normal person would have. But something strange happened in that bathroom, surrounded by Italian marble and designer hand towels. As I stared at those messages, feeling the full weight of their betrayal settle over me, I felt something unexpected. Clarity. Pure, cold, crystalline clarity. 'Cause Victoria Morgan had made one critical mistake. She'd assumed I was exactly what I appeared to be, a naive, powerless girl from Southie who'd be crushed by their games. But Victoria had never asked about my father. She'd never wondered why a factory worker would have a daughter who could get into law school, who could work her way through one of Boston's most prestigious firms, who could navigate legal documents with ease. My father hadn't been a factory worker. That was just the cover story I'd maintained for years, even after his death, out of habit and protection. My father had been Special Agent Robert Carter of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. For 20 years, he'd worked undercover investigating corporate fraud, money laundering, and organized crime connections in Boston's elite families. He died not in a factory accident, but from a heart attack brought on by stress from a particularly difficult case. A case involving the Morgan family. When he died, I'd inherited boxes of his notes, copies of financial records, recorded conversations, everything he'd gathered but never had the chance to use. I kept them locked away, unsure what to do with them, too grief-stricken to even look at them properly. Until now. Standing in that bathroom, holding James's phone with their cruel messages glowing on the screen, pieces began clicking into place. My father's final cases had included the Morgans. The timing of James approaching me at that gala, just 3 months after my father's death. Victoria's instant hatred of me despite knowing nothing about me. They hadn't chosen me at random. They'd chosen me because they thought I was a nobody, a girl with no family, no protection, no resources. Someone they could use and discard without consequences. They didn't know my father had been investigating them. They didn't know I had evidence of their crimes sitting in a storage unit in Dorchester. They didn't know that the quiet paralegal they dismissed as beneath them had spent the last 2 years secretly completing her father's work, documenting every financial irregularity, every shell company, every suspicious transaction. I had been building a case against them. Not consciously at first, it had started as a way to feel close to my father, to understand what he'd died fighting for. But over time, as I'd dug deeper, as I'd used my legal access to cross-reference documents and transactions, I'd uncovered something massive. The Morgans weren't just wealthy. They were criminals. Tax evasion, money laundering, fraud, all hidden behind layers of legitimate businesses and charitable foundations. My father had known it. Now I knew it. And in about 45 minutes, everyone else would know it too. Because if they wanted to humiliate me publicly, I'd give them a show they'd never forget. I took several deep breaths, wiped my eyes, and fixed my makeup. When I emerged from the bathroom, Sarah was pacing nervously. "Emma, are you okay? We need to get you downstairs in 10 minutes. "I'm fine," I said, my voice steady now. "Actually, I'm perfect. Sarah, I need you to do something for me." I pulled out my own phone and sent 3 carefully crafted text messages. The first went to my former boss and mentor Diana Walsh, now a senior partner at her firm. The second went to my father's old FBI contact, Agent Harrison. The third went to every major news outlet in Boston. The message was simple. Attend the Morgan Carter wedding at 12 p.m. You won't want to miss what happens at the altar. Proof of major financial crimes will be presented. Come with cameras. "Emma, what are you doing?" Sarah's eyes were wide. I smiled at her, and it must have been an unsettling smile because she took a step back. "I'm getting married. Or at least I'm going to try. Come on. We don't want to be late." The garden was packed. I saw politicians, business leaders, society figures. All of Boston's elite had turned out for the Morgan wedding. Camera crews I'd invited were being held at the perimeter by security, arguing to be let in. Perfect. They'd get their footage soon enough. The string quartet started playing. Sarah walked down the aisle ahead of me, and then it was my turn. I stood at the entrance to the garden, looking down that long white runner toward the altar where James waited in his perfect tuxedo, his face arranged in an expression of loving anticipation. Victoria sat in the front row, already dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the emotional mother of the groom. They thought I was walking into a trap. They thought I was a lamb being led to slaughter. They had no idea. I started walking, and as I did, I saw Agent Harrison and two other agents slip into the back of the assembled crowd. I saw Diana Walsh taking a seat, her expression concerned but attentive. I saw the camera crews finally pushing their way past security, their equipment now live and rolling. Everything was in place. James watched me approach, and for just a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt? Doubt? It didn't matter now. He'd made his choices. Now he'd live with the consequences. I reached the altar. The officiant, oblivious to the undercurrents, smiled warmly at us both and began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. I barely heard the words. I was watching Victoria in my peripheral vision. She was tense, coiled, waiting for her moment, waiting to spring the trap. The officiant reached the traditional part. If anyone has any objections to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. This was it. This was her moment. I saw Victoria start to rise from her seat, her hand reaching into her purse where I knew she had the fake financial documents they'd created. But I moved faster. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the hushed crowd, I have an objection. The garden went silent. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. James stared at me in confusion. Victoria froze halfway out of her seat, her carefully constructed plan derailing. Emma, James said, trying to sound concerned, what are you doing? I turned to face the assembled guests, all 200 of them, plus the cameras now recording everything. I'm objecting to my own wedding, because I've just learned some very interesting things about my husband-to-be and his family. This is highly irregular, the officiant sputtered. Oh, it's about to get much more irregular, I said. I pulled out James's phone from my bouquet where I'd hidden it. You see, James accidentally left his phone with me this morning, and I found some fascinating messages. James's face went white. Victoria was now standing, her expression no longer sorrowful but furious. Emma, whatever you think you saw, James started. I saw messages between you and your cousin Claire, I said loudly, making sure every guest could hear. Intimate messages. Planning to be together after you'd humiliated me at this altar. I saw a group chat called The Project where you, your mother, and her financial advisor planned to publicly accuse me of being a gold digger, using fake financial documents to destroy my reputation. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned toward Victoria and James. Claire, sitting 3 rows back, had turned scarlet. You were never going to marry me, I continued, my voice strong and clear. This whole thing was an elaborate, cruel joke. A way to humiliate someone you considered beneath you. How dare you, Victoria hissed, stalking toward me. You have no right to make these accusations. You're just a trashy little nobody who has evidence, I interrupted. I pulled out my own phone now and tapped on a file I'd prepared. You see, Mrs. Morgan, you made a mistake when you targeted me. You thought I was nobody. You thought I was powerless. But you never asked about my father. You never wondered why a factory worker's daughter could navigate the legal world so easily. I held up my phone, showing the first page of documents I'd scanned. My father was FBI Special Agent Robert Carter. For 20 years, he investigated financial crimes among Boston's elite. And his final case, the one he died working on, was about your family. Color drained from Victoria's face. You're lying. I have everything, I said, my voice ringing with certainty. Every shell company. Every fraudulent transaction. Every penny you've laundered through your charitable foundations. The offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The fake invoices to your own companies. Tax evasion schemes going back 15 years. My father documented all of it, and I've spent the last 2 years verifying it, adding to it, building an airtight case. I gestured to Agent Harrison at the back. And now I'm turning it all over to the FBI. Chaos erupted. Victoria lunged at me, but security guards held her back. James was trying to speak, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Claire had buried her face in her hands. The guests were on their feet, some shouting, some trying to leave, the news cameras capturing every second. "You can't do this," Victoria screamed. "You have no authority. This is slander. I'll sue you for every penny you don't have." "Actually," came Diana Walsh's voice as she made her way to the front, "my firm has been working with Miss Carter for the past month on this matter. Everything she's presenting has been verified and cross-referenced with federal databases. And as of 8 a.m. this morning, federal warrants were issued for your arrest, Mrs. Morgan, as well as arrest warrants for your son James and your financial advisor Richard Preston." Agent Harrison was now walking down the aisle with two other agents. "Victoria Morgan, James Morgan, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and wire fraud." The sound of metal cuffs clicking into place was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Victoria was shrieking, still trying to maintain her dignity even as agents read her rights. "This is a mistake. Do you know who I am? Do you know what family you're dealing with?" "We know exactly who you are, ma'am," Agent Harrison said calmly. "We've known for years. We just didn't have enough evidence until Miss Carter provided her father's documentation along with her own research." I watched as they led James and Victoria away in handcuffs, their white wedding-appropriate clothes now looking absurd against the chrome of the cuffs. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The garden had descended into pandemonium. Guests were fleeing, some being stopped by agents for questioning. Camera crews were getting it all. Sarah was standing next to me, her mouth hanging open in shock. "Emma," she whispered, "what just happened?" I looked at the altar where I'd been supposed to get married, at the flowers Victoria had chosen, at the perfect wedding she'd created as the setting for my destruction. "Justice," I said simply. Justice happened. The officiant was long gone. The string quartet had stopped playing. The beautiful October day continued around us, oblivious to the human drama that had unfolded. Diana approached me, shaking her head in amazement. "Emma, that was the most dramatic takedown I've ever witnessed. Your father would be so proud." "I wish he was here," I said, and for the first time that day I felt tears threaten. Real tears, not manipulative ones. "He is," Diana said gently. "He's here in every document you verified, every connection you made. You finished his work. You got them." Over the next few weeks, the story exploded across every news outlet in the country. "Society Wedding Turns FBI Sting," read one headline. "Bride Exposes Groom's Family Crime Empire at Altar," read another. I became briefly famous, which I hated, but it was worth it to see the Morgan family dynasty crumble. The investigation revealed even more than my father had documented. The Morgans had been running their schemes for over 30 years. Millions of dollars had been moved through fake charities, shell corporations, and offshore accounts. They'd bribed officials, falsified documents, and destroyed evidence. James was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for his role in the conspiracy and for his participation in planning to defraud me specifically. Claire, as an accomplice who'd known about the family's crimes, received 5 years. Richard Preston, the financial advisor, turned state's evidence in exchange for a lighter sentence. But Victoria got 15 years. The judge, a woman in her 60s, had been particularly harsh during sentencing. "You used your position, your wealth, and your social standing to commit crimes and to abuse those you considered beneath you," the judge had said, looking at Victoria over her reading glasses. "You attempted to publicly humiliate an innocent woman because you viewed her as unworthy of your family. The irony is that she has more integrity, more courage, and more honor than you have ever displayed. You are the one who is unworthy, Mrs. Morgan. And you will have ample time to reflect on that." Victoria had wept in court, her designer suit wrinkled, her perfect hair finally showing gray roots. She'd tried to maintain her dignity, but it was impossible. Everyone knew what she was now. Everyone had seen the videos from the wedding, had read the transcripts of her messages, had heard her screaming that she was above the law. All her social standing, all her connections, all her wealth, none of it could save her. I attended the sentencing. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. As they led her away, she looked at me one final time. There was no more contempt in her eyes, no more superiority. Just defeat. "You destroyed everything," she said hoarsely. "No," I replied calmly. "You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone could see what you really were." 6 months after the wedding I was sitting in a new apartment in Cambridge, smaller than what the Morgans would have approved of but mine, bought with money I'd earned honestly. I'd taken a position at Diana's firm working specifically on white-collar crime cases. Turned out I had a talent for uncovering financial irregularities. Sarah was with me, helping me unpack the last of my boxes. "So," she said, holding up a photo of James and me from happier times, "what do we do with this?" I took it from her and tossed it in the trash. "Nothing. Garbage. Like the whole relationship was." "You know," Sarah said thoughtfully, "most people would be devastated. Heartbroken. You seem fine." "I think I grieved for what I thought I had during those months of wedding planning," I said. "By the time I found those messages, I wasn't losing love, I was losing an illusion. And once I knew it was all fake, there was nothing to mourn." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hi, Emma. This is David Chen. We worked together on the Morrison case last month. I was wondering if you'd like to get coffee sometime." I smiled. David was a junior partner at Diana's firm, specializing in corporate law. He was quiet, intelligent, wore glasses that he was always pushing up his nose. He'd helped me navigate the legal complexities of turning over my father's evidence to the FBI. He'd never once asked about the scandal, never treated me like a celebrity or a curiosity. He'd just been kind. "What is it?" Sarah asked, seeing my expression. "Someone asking me to coffee." And I typed back a response. "Coffee sounds great. How about Tuesday at 10? His reply was instant. "Perfect. Looking forward to it." "Good," Sarah said firmly. "You deserve someone decent." "I deserve to be happy by myself first," I corrected. "Coffee is just coffee. But it's a start." That Tuesday, I met David at a small cafe in Harvard Square. We talked for 3 hours, ranging from case law to favorite books to our families. He told me about his parents, immigrants from Taiwan who'd worked 3 jobs to put him through school. I told him about my father, about following in his footsteps in my own way. "He sounds like he was an incredible man," David said. "He was. I miss him every day." "But he left you something important," David said. "Not just evidence. The ability to fight for what's right. To stand up to people who think they're untouchable." Over the next few months, David and I grew closer. It was different from what I'd had with James. Slower, gentler, built on truth instead of lies. He met Sarah and got her stamp of approval. He never pressured me, never rushed me. He just showed up, consistently, honestly, proving through his actions that not everyone was like the Morgans. A year after the wedding that destroyed an empire, I got an unexpected letter. It was from James, sent from the federal penitentiary where he was serving his sentence. "Dear Emma," it read, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I think about what we did to you every day. My mother convinced me you were a threat, that you were using me. But the truth is we were using you. And it was cruel and unforgivable. You were always kind to me, always genuine. I threw that away because I was too weak to stand up to my mother, too selfish to see past what I wanted. You deserved so much better. I'm glad you got justice. I'm sorry it had to be this way. I hope wherever you are, you're happy. James." I read the letter twice, then filed it away. It didn't change anything. But it was closure of a sort. That evening, David took me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the North End. After we'd ordered, he reached across the table and took my hand. "Emma, I need to tell you something." My heart skipped. "Okay." "I'm falling in love with you. I know it might be too soon, I know you've been through hell, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel. You're the strongest, smartest, bravest person I've ever met, and I'm so grateful you gave me a chance." I felt tears prick my eyes, happy ones this time. "David, I'm falling in love with you too. And it's not too soon. It's exactly the right time." He smiled, that shy, genuine smile that made my heart warm. Yeah. We were married 2 years later in a small ceremony at my parents' gravesite. Just family and close friends. Sarah was my maid of honor. Diana gave me away. David's parents cried happy tears. There were no society figures, no elaborate gardens, no string quartets. Just love, real and honest and true. As David and I exchanged vows, I thought about that other wedding, the one that had been designed to destroy me. I thought about Victoria calling me trash, about James's betrayal, about the cruelty I'd faced. And I thought about how all of it had led me here, to this moment, to this man who looked at me like I was the most valuable person in the world. "I do," I said, my voice clear and strong. "I do," David echoed. And this time I knew it was real. 5 years have passed since that October day. The Morgan family never recovered. Their businesses were dissolved, their assets seized and distributed to the victims of their fraud. Victoria is still in prison, denied parole twice for refusing to accept responsibility for her actions. James was released after serving 6 years and now works at a nonprofit, reportedly trying to make amends for his past. I don't think about them much anymore. I'm too busy living my life, our life. David and I bought a house in Newton. I made partner at the firm, specializing in cases that protect victims of financial crimes. We have a daughter now, Roberta, named after my father. She's 3 years old and has his eyes, his sense of justice. When she asks about her grandfather, I tell her he was a hero. Last month, we attended a charity gala, one I was invited to as a guest of honor, not as +1 to someone else. As I walked into that same ballroom where I'd first met James all those years ago, I felt nothing but peace. The scared girl from Southie who'd thought she needed a rich husband to be valuable was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who'd fought for justice and won, who'd built a life on her own terms. David squeezed my hand as we entered. "You okay?" I looked at him, at this good, decent man who loved me for exactly who I was. "I'm perfect," I said. And I meant it. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never found those messages, if I'd gone through with the wedding, if I'd let them humiliate me as planned. I would have been destroyed, probably. I would have walked away broken, convinced I was worthless. But I found the messages. I uncovered the truth. I fought back. And I won. To any woman out there who's been called trash, who's been told she's not good enough, who's been used and discarded, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion of you. Your value doesn't come from the approval of people who never deserved you in the first place. You are not trash. You are treasure. And sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well. Sometimes it's exposing the truth, standing up for justice, and watching the people who tried to destroy you face the consequences of their own actions. Victoria Morgan called me trash at my wedding. 10 minutes later, she was being led away in handcuffs, crying on the floor of her perfect garden as her entire world collapsed around her. And me? I was standing tall, finally free, finally happy, finally home.